Mark Farley.
And I'm Denise Pizarro. We are live from the Westerly, Rhode Island office of Randall Realtors. We invite you to spend a little time as we share our insights and experiences, tips and tactics that we've gotten over quite a few years. Our goal, help you become a skilled buyer and a better seller.
Did I repeat myself that I said it was Clark Farley because I saw this
I
thing
know it
flicker?
flickered after, so I
Okay,
don't know if you
she's still Denise Pissarro.
know. And you are still Clark Farley.
Thank
And
you.
we're still at Randall Realtors in Westerly, Rhode Island.
Now that really won't set us up for my next line, which is we've both been in the business for a very long time. Joke to myself. Things have changed over the years. Things like, for example, mobile phones. When I started in the business, this is old person story warning. Cell phones were like these 15-pound bags of stuff with an antenna coming out of it. And you'd like talk into the microphone and do that breaker thing. And they gave that to top agents back in the day. That's changed somewhat. But the basic principles of what we do, the landscape is still the same. You've got people who are determined to buy a house and they want to learn the best way to do it. How to make wise decisions. You have homeowners who want to look to sell their house for the most amount of money in the least amount of time. And so they're looking for advice and information. And luckily, there's the internet, which is the repository of a bunch of that. And extra lucky for them is a 20-minute briefing.
Once a week.
Once we
Mhm.
have how-to information, we have pro tips, good old advice presented the way it's done in real life, which is the briefings will always be related to real estate. Some weeks will topic will relate to buyer's problems. Other weeks we'll put on a hat. As a joke to Denise, I wrote something about put on a seller's hat, but I just realized we're not sellers. But we can talk to sellers and their issues, right?
That's correct.
And I don't have a hat,
We'll talk to both.
but we don't have hats.
No,
Neither one of us would.
no.
Okay.
Well, if it's cold.
But you'll get a warning in case we do have a need for hats.
So this week we're going to be answering two viewers' questions. We got two questions this week, which was wonderful. So we do invite you to please send us your questions here on the chat box, or you can visit our YouTube page where we post all of our past briefings. And be sure to subscribe when you go there. We're still trying to get our own name, and we need 100 subscribers to do that. So go to YouTube, subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram, where we do a weekly in South County Is This? And so join in the fun, check it out, tell your friends, and make sure you like us and share our pages. So don't forget, you can put your questions down in the chat box as we go along. If we can't get to them in this session, we will get to them in a future session.
Or you can send it into the Facebook page that we have. In fact, that's where the last two came to us in the messaging on the
Yes, that's
page
correct.
of that. Because we're starting to recognize the names. We Denise just said we have two questions. I'll do this joke until somebody laughs.
It's really not funny.
It is. But we have two questions from two regular viewers of this thing. So let's start with the first question. Comes from Dearta.
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 Yes.
Dearta writes us the question. She says, "What are the key facts a foreign national must know about purchasing a home in Westerly?"
So basically, according to Investopedia, anyone can buy and own property in the United States regardless of citizenship. There
They have the money.
are pretty much things that prevent any
Yeah,
individual
yeah.
of any foreign citizenship from purchasing or owning property in the U.S.
Mhm.
Now, financing is another whole matter.
It is. And if you've been following along with us and anybody new here, we constantly come back to at the base of all of what these briefings are, if you're a buyer, you want to assemble a team of experts that'll save you a lot of trouble, a lot of misdirection, and a lot of stress. So when Denise said, well, the difference is financing, you should have a team, and on your team would be a finance mortgage person. So you're like ahead of the game even before you run into the question, all right, what type of financing?
Because a lot of mortgages are based on your U.S. credit history. So obviously, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you're probably not going to have any U.S. credit. Some lenders have just decided that there's no other way for them to analyze their risk, so they will not loan to someone from who's not a citizen. But other lenders have developed different methods of deciding that. So again, as Clark said, if you have your team of a real estate agent and a lender that you can trust, there are other ways that you can get finances. If you, with all things being equal, if you are a permanent resident or a non-permanent but have a no, if you're a permanent resident
Yeah.
of the U.S., do have a simpler process to get a financing,
Yeah.
excuse me. So the FHA does offer a home loan to non-U.S. citizens with the same loan terms as every other buyer. But you will need to have a social security number or I believe it's called an ITIN number, an international identification number, valid foreign passport, U.S. visa or driver's license, bank statement, and if you have it, financial records from your overseas bank, and proof of reserves, pay stubs, credit scores, tax return, those kind of things. Basically, um, to get money, you have to prove that you have access to pay it back, that you have the means to pay it back. So if you're paying cash, you don't have an issue. But if you are getting financing, there could be an issue.
Yeah. And in fact, if all of that sounds familiar, that sounds like one or two of the briefings we did on uh, getting ready to buy a house, the financing piece.
Mhm.
You would do well, and we'll nag about this through every briefing, which is do your homework first, then go out and have fun looking at houses. So if you gather whether you need to have a TITN XY card, which are harder
It's
to
an
get than the
ITIN.
ITN. Those are the easy ones to get. Doesn't matter. It's the idea. Our advice is always grounded in the idea of prepare ahead of the need, and you'll have a mortgage expert at your disposal. And in fact, I had mentioned we write this thing out before we go on the air. I'm sure you didn't guess that. But I had a note about the people. In this case, we're talking a foreign national comes in and wants to buy a house in Wesley. Fine. When it comes to getting your experts, go to a mortgage person. Everybody that you, as a buyer, encounter are in the service part of the business at that point.
Right.
They be completely happy and show confidence for you to listen to them. If they don't, if they're not happy or they want money, it's somebody else.
That's right. You don't ever pay money for someone to provide the service to you in real estate.
Not until you get into contract.
That's right. None of us get paid till we're in contract.
Yeah. With your expert team, everybody on the team should be picked for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that they're more than happy to help.
So the only other thing you really need to know about if you're going to buy property in the U.S. is that eventually, if you decide to sell the property, there could be some tax ramifications for that.
Mm-hmm.
So you do want to also know before you buy what those are. And the best thing to do is also, as part of your team that we've discussed before, is to have an accountant and an attorney familiar with the tax laws, not only with the federal government, but with the state that you're purchasing in. I know in Rhode Island, if you are a non resident of the state of Rhode Island, regardless of where else you're from, that there is a tax withholding requirement
Mm-hmm.
for someone who's selling a property here in Rhode Island. So if you're a non-resident of the country, they're going to want someone in the country to hold money in order in case you have a tax liability.
Yeah.
So that may be on your potential new buyer
Mm-hmm.
to withhold that. We are not attorneys or lawyers. So in that instance, you will have to get in your team an attorney who's familiar and a lawyer who's familiar with international
Yeah,
taxes.
and I think we're kind of on safe ground saying anybody out there who's in the situation of coming to this country or going to another country to buy things, you get your team, and the team we always talk about is a lead, a good agent to be the lead, a financing person, inspection attorney, and then for this kind of case, all you do is add an accountant. And
Actually, like I said previously, I think that there's a lot of times when an accountant is part of your team.
mm,
Aside from this,
yeah,
I've had an
yeah,
estate sale
yeah,
where someone had passed away and they didn't use an accountant to file the taxes. And the sale of the property fell apart because the taxes had not been filed properly of the estate when the deceased when the parent was passed,
yeah.
and it held up the wholesale and the buyer eventually walked away. So there are incidences, even with people who live
Mm,
out of the state, where you're going to need an accountant
yeah, yeah,
to tell you how that works. Attorneys often do the how much is you gain kind of thing. They can help you with that.
yeah.
But an accountant also can help you sometimes if you're buying a vacation property.
We have a 1032s, is that right?
1031 exchange
1031.
property, that's
One
where you
house.
buy one vacation property and you buy another one, and there's all kinds of rules for that.
If you do that twice, then you get the 1032.
1030, no, it's always a 1031 exchange.
It's on the cover. I had the
Yeah,
onesies
you were
going.
wrong.
I like that little faux pas.
Yes, it was a faux pas. So we do have another question from
Yeah.
another viewer. And so Willie asked,
Hey, Willie.
what happens when somebody buys a home and there are issues with the home that the sellers knew about but didn't disclose to the buyers?
Now, does the hair get any whiter as we consider that question? As an agent, we are aware of almost every situation for as long as Denise has been doing this, that some situations just guaranteed stressful. And the answer is as simple as you talk to your attorney on that one.
That's right.
Because it doesn't seem to happen all that much, or maybe it's just the luck of the draw. But if something of that nature comes up, yeah, an attorney is the only person qualified to advise you on that.
Right. Every state does have different disclosure requirements. In Rhode Island and Connecticut, a good agent makes sure the seller, client, well, in Rhode Island, all states, a good agent, not just in Rhode Island, Connecticut, but
Except for Idaho.
always bring up Idaho.
I did.
A good, ah, lost my train of thought here.
You're welcome.
Good agent makes sure their seller client knows how valuable a fully completed seller disclosure is, and that it's a requirement by the state that they provide such a disclosure.
That's a good point. Because what we do with this 20-minute briefing is, yeah, sure, we do. This is mostly buyer week. Other times it'll be seller week. But when I have clients, I kind of want them to know as much about the overall process. So I would talk to a buyer about what a seller did to get to the point of having the house on the market.
Well, and when I talk to a seller, what I do when I give the disclosures, I said, I want you to put the good, the bad, and the ugly on here, because what you disclose is good for you. What if you need a new roof? If there's a leak in the roof
Hmm.
and you've told the seller that, and they know that that is considered in the price that you put on the market, then that becomes out of your negotiation. So the best thing to do is to disclose the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Advice follows agents typically. Um, so we are all licensed agents. Referred to as a fiduciary duty in licensing law, so that we have information about a property, we will disclose it. It just, I think they call it material.
Yeah,
Well,
material
so
defects.
if we see a meteor hit the building and then they fixed it up, we probably will mention to the next um,
Well,
buyer.
even if we find something out in an inspection
Yeah.
and then for some reason that
Oh, yeah.
person walks
Oh, yeah.
away, that may not be on the disclosure, but now we are obligated, and so is the seller, to
Mm.
disclose that information. So that's often where the sellers get nervous because now you have, a chimney flashing that's leaking. There
Yeah.
was no way for the seller to know that.
Yeah.
Probably if it was leaking into the attic, he may not have known that. So, um, Now he's got to disclose that. So if the buyer came and said, "Hey, I want you to fix that chimney flashing," he might say, "You know what? I'm going to fix it because I don't want to go through this again."
Well, that's will be, on the briefing, and I can see we'd revisit a seller briefing about that whole business of how ready should you be to try to head off that kind of thing, because it just doesn't help. If you have to go back with new knowledge, then you do it up front, and the thing about almost any buyer is if they get nervous about, hey, are we all dealing on the same page, and that wrecks things a lot. It just spoils it.
It does. Said, we have been in the business for a long time, both of us.
You had been in
Oh,
business
okay.
for
So, yeah, that's because I don't have any gray hair. But anyway, the one answer I'd like to say to you, Willie, is I've been doing this a long time, so has Clark. Have you had this situation come up in any houses you've sold?
okay.
The fact that you found out later that your seller didn't disclose something?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, I have not. Yeah.
I'm as old as I am.
I've never had a case where somebody said, oh, the furnace
Mhm.
doesn't, there's no heat, or, there's a hole in the roof, or nothing like
No, unfortunately. But the thing is, as you and all agents do, is that seller disclosure is a piece of paper from the seller. And whether we're on the listing side or the buyer's side, here's a piece of paper from the seller. Okay, read it.
that.
Not, I don't want to get into the whole inspection thing. We'll do another one, but the arm's length, full disclosure, you can't go wrong with that.
What I'm saying is, like, when this happened to you in the past, how did it work out? Because that's what Willie wants to know.
Okay. They worked it out. And I don't want to go into the details, but the parties worked it out. But you'll see that, that's one of the things I see in the real estate columns.
Hmm.
The what can I do because of that? And Willie, that's a good question, and I want to thank you because I think, along with Manny and Kim and Emma, have been like right from the very start.
Hmm.
So props to you for the questions because that makes our job a lot easier.
Oh, we got another question here too. Let's see. What are the pros and cons of refinancing your home and using the equity for a major purchase?
Next week.
Good question. There's a lot of answers there, and it's pretty individual too.
I like the questions, and I'll thank everybody out there because these questions, this is the whole idea.
Mhm.
We're doing this pretending we're in the front seat of a car, and you're the buyer or the seller, or the buyer will be in the back seat of the car, and the questions come up over the armrest.
Right.
And we answer them. Thank you for those kinds of questions. But speaking of next week, don't we have
Oh,
an
yes,
interesting
next
thing?
week. Surprise, big news. We will be here Thursday night
That's right.
instead of Wednesday night for the next 2 weeks.
That means meatloaf instead of spaghetti.
Wednesday's Prince Spaghetti Day. Okay.
We're not in Idaho.
Thursday is Thirsty Thursday.
Ah,
Yes.
but
But anyway, 2 Thursdays in a row. So we'll be not here on Wednesday, next week and the following week. Still 5:30 though on Thursday.
I'm going to try something new with the announcements because we're developing how we do this thing, and there seems to be a thing that we can what's called plan an
I
event.
think if we can plan a Facebook event,
Yeah.
then you'll get reminders so you don't have to forget about it. But I'm going to figure it out because I know there's a way to do it.
Okay, so anybody out there now, if you don't mind jotting down when you got it, or what are you talking about, kind of thing, we'll check in with you next week.
I think they might have to follow us to get a reminder. I'm not sure, but
Oh, they follow us.
yes, well, hopefully you are following us. And
Yeah, these guys are.
they are.
But tell somebody else that you don't know to follow us.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I know. We should plan a contest.
Where how many people that they don't know they've told?
How many people? Yeah, but how would we know that?
These people on the
Honest.
system.
So don't forget, Facebook Live next Thursday, 5:30. Check out YouTube. The Coastal New England Real Estate Team is our YouTube channel, our Instagram, and our Twitter. On YouTube, you can check all our past briefings and see them all. Please subscribe. And check out Instagram, see if you can figure out where in Rhode Island we are. Actually, South County, sorry, not the whole state, just South County, and which is not even a county.
No.
But check it out anyway.
Yeah, last week's fooled a lot of people. In case you were wondering, the Dunkin' Donuts that's hardly ever open. That's up in 138 in Richmond.
138 in Richmond, and we never see anybody there.
I've never seen anything all these years, except for the day I took the picture last week. Freaking pulling out of the Dunkin' Donuts. I
See
thought,
that on Facebook Live.
okay, I didn't say that on. I said somebody was pulling out of the Dunkin' Donuts. Like, it ruined my whole day. But I took the picture anyway because every other time I go there, they're not open.
Are they not open, or just they're doing drive-through and you just don't see people?
No, no. You drive by and say, it's not open. Like that kind of thing. Um, I could make other jokes, but luckily we're out of time.
You are out of town, so out of town. Next Thursday, 5:30, we will be here again on Facebook Live. See you then.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.